On March 14, 2023, a team of Forbes investigators published a report that should have burned the internet to the ground. It didn't. Most people scrolled past it, but buried in that article was a single word that changes everything you think you know about the app on your phone. The word was heating. Not the algorithm, not the AI. Heating, a manual override tool that allows ByteDance employees to handpick videos and artificially inject them into millions of feeds, regardless of engagement, regardless of authenticity, regardless of what you actually want to see. This wasn't a leak from a disgruntled engineer. This was confirmed by internal documents and multiple sources inside the company. TikTok's spokesperson didn't deny it. They admitted it. They said heating accounts for approximately 1 to 2% of total video views. 1 to 2%. That sounds small until you realize TikTok users globally watched over 16 trillion views in 2023 alone. 1% of 16 trillion is 160 billion manipulated views. That's not a bug. That's a feature. You think the algorithm is neutral. You think it's just code. You think it's showing you what you like because it learned your preferences. That's the story they want you to believe. But here's what actually happens. Every day, employees in ByteDance's operations team receive a list. That list contains videos, hashtags, and creators that need a boost. They don't boost them because they're good. They boost them because someone, somewhere, decided these narratives need to spread. The Forbes investigation revealed that hating was used to promote specific influencers who had partnerships with TikTok. It was used to amplify branded content. It was used to make certain political messages go viral, while others died in obscurity. And the most disturbing part, the users never know. There's no label, no disclosure. The video just appears in your feed, and your brain assumes the algorithm thought you'd like it. But the algorithm didn't choose it. A person did. Now let's talk about the experiment that no one wants to acknowledge. TikTok operates two separate apps. One is called TikTok. The other is called Douyin. Same company, same technology. But the content is not the same. Not even close. Douyin is the version available in China, where ByteDance is headquartered. TikTok is the version the rest of the world gets. If the algorithm is truly neutral, if it's really just giving people what they want, then both apps should look similar. They don't. In 2021, a group of researchers at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute spent 4 months analyzing the top 1,000 videos on Douyin versus the top 1,000 on TikTok. The results were so stark, they published a warning to Western governments. On Douyin, the most promoted content was educational. Science experiments, engineering tutorials, patriotic messages about Chinese innovation, historical deep dives, lectures on mathematics, videos showing young people how to build things, how to code, how to start businesses. The average screen time for users under 14 years old is limited to 40 minutes per day, and the app automatically enters sleep mode between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. On TikTok, the Western version, the most promoted content was rage bait, prank videos, gender war arguments, thirst traps, cringe compilations, pseudo-political rants designed to trigger emotional responses, 15-second clips of people screaming at each other. The researchers noted that even when Western users actively searched for educational content, the algorithm would slowly pull them back toward viral chaos. There is no screen time limit for minors. There's no sleep mode. The app is designed to be used as long as possible, as often as possible. In December 2022, a former ByteDance executive named Yin Taoyu gave an interview to a Taiwanese news outlet. He said, and this is a direct translation, "The instructions we received were clear. Douyin is about nation building. TikTok is about engagement. There are two different missions." He left the company 3 months later and has not spoken publicly since. Let's go back to the origin. ByteDance was founded in March 2012 by a man named Zhang Yimeng. He was 28 years old. He had just left a failed startup and was living in a cramped apartment in Beijing's Haidian district, eating instant ramen and sleeping 4 hours a night. His co-founder, Liang Rubo, later told Bloomberg that Zhang had one obsession during those early days. He wanted to build a system that could predict what people wanted before they knew they wanted it. Not serve them, predict them. Control the craving. ByteDance's first product was Tuxiao, a news aggregation app that used machine learning to serve hyper-personalized headlines. It exploded. By 2014, Tuxiao had 50 million daily active users. By 2016, it had 78 million. Investors called it the most addictive app in China. Zhang called it a content distribution engine. But behind closed doors, he called it something else. In a leaked internal memo from November 2015, Zhang wrote to his executive team, "We are not a media company. We are a behavior modification system. Our goal is to shape attention, not follow it." In September 2016, ByteDance launched Douyin. It was TikTok before TikTok existed. The app allowed users to create short videos set to music, and within 8 months, it had 100 million users in China. The growth was so explosive that Tencent, the tech giant behind WeChat, tried to buy ByteDance for $3 billion. Zhang declined. He knew what he had built. In November 2017, ByteDance spent $800 million to acquire Musical, a lip-sync app that was popular with American teenagers. On August 2, 2018, ByteDance merged Musical into a new app and rebranded it. The name was TikTok. The logo was black and cyan. The tagline was, "Make your day." But inside ByteDance headquarters in Beijing, employees had a different phrase for it. They called it Project Trojan Horse. That phrase appeared in internal Slack messages that were later leaked to journalists at the Wall Street Journal 2022. When asked about it, ByteDance claimed the messages were taken out of context. They never explained what the context was. By December 2019, TikTok had been downloaded 1.5 billion times globally. It became the most downloaded app in the United States, surpassing Instagram, Facebook, and Snapchat. Parents thought it was harmless. Politicians ignored it. Psychologists started noticing something strange. Teenage patients were coming into therapy sessions talking about trends they'd seen on TikTok. Dangerous trends. In October 2021, the Devious Lick Challenge went viral. It encouraged students to vandalize school property and steal items from bathrooms. Thousands of schools across the U.S. reported damages exceeding $600 million in total. In July 2022, the Benadryl Challenge appeared. It told teenagers to take massive doses of the antihistamine to hallucinate. At least 7 deaths were directly linked to it. In January 2023, the Blackout Challenge resurfaced, instructing children to choke themselves until they lost consciousness. A 10-year-old girl in Pennsylvania named Nyla Anderson died attempting it. Her parents sued TikTok. The company's legal response argued that they were not responsible for user-generated content. But here's the problem. The Forbes investigation revealed that some of these challenge videos had been heated, manually boosted. Someone inside ByteDance decided these videos needed more views. Zhang Yiming stepped down as CEO of ByteDance in May 2021. He was 38 years old. He claimed he wanted to focus on long-term strategy. But 3 months earlier, the Chinese government had summoned him to a private meeting in Beijing. No press, no statements, just Zhang and a representative from the Cyberspace Administration of China. When he emerged, colleagues said he looked pale. One employee told Reuters he wasn't the same after that meeting. He stopped talking about global expansion. He only talked about compliance. In November 2021, the Wall Street Journal published a bombshell investigation. They had obtained internal ByteDance documents showing that the company had shared user data with the Chinese government on at least 14 occasions between 2018 and 2020. The data included IP addresses, device information, and location tracking. TikTok's US spokesperson called the report misleading. They didn't call it false. Now here's the part that should terrify you. In June 2022, BuzzFeed News published leaked audio from more than 80 internal TikTok meetings. The recordings confirmed that engineers in China had access to US user data repeatedly between September 2021 and January 2022. One director said, quote, "Everything is seen in China." Another employee admitted that TikTok's US data was stored on servers that Chinese employees could access without approval from American supervisors. TikTok's response was to announce Project Texas, a supposed $300 million plan to store US data on Oracle servers in Austin. But the leaked audio revealed something else. Even after Project Texas launched, Chinese engineers still had backdoor access for what the company called debugging purposes. Debugging. That was the word they used. You need to understand what this means. This isn't about privacy. It's bigger. It's about influence. It's about a foreign government having the ability to decide what 150 million Americans see every single day. And they're not just watching, they're curating, they're shaping, they're heating. Let's talk about the war TikTok waged against its enemies. And by enemies, I mean every platform that came before it. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat. They didn't just compete, they executed a strategy so ruthless that by 2020, Mark Zuckerberg was telling his executives that TikTok represented an existential threat to Meta's survival. Internal emails obtained by The Verge in October 2022 showed Zuckerberg writing, "This is the first time we've faced a competitor that is growing faster than we can copy." Facebook had always won by cloning. They cloned Snapchat stories, they cloned Twitter with threads. But TikTok was different. By the time Instagram launched Reels in August 2020, TikTok already had 800 million monthly active users. Reels felt desperate. It felt like a knockoff. And the users knew it. By March 2021, TikTok had crossed 1 billion downloads on Android alone. The gap wasn't closing. It was widening. Here's how they did it. ByteDance spent over $3 billion on user acquisition between 2018 and 2020. That's not normal. Most apps rely on organic growth. TikTok bought its audience. They paid influencers on Instagram and YouTube to tell their followers to follow them on TikTok. They ran ads on Facebook promoting TikTok. They sponsored musicians, athletes, and celebrities. In November 2019, TikTok paid the NFL $200 million to create official content on the platform. In February 2020, they paid Universal Music Group an undisclosed sum rumored to be over $400 million to license their entire catalog. They were hemorrhaging cash, but Zhang Yiming didn't care. In a leaked investor call from June 2020, he told shareholders, "We are not optimizing for profit. We are optimizing for capture. Once we have their attention, we will never give it back." ByteDance lost over $2 billion that year, but TikTok became the most valuable startup in the world, valued at $140 billion. Now let's talk about what they did to their competitors' employees. In March 2021, Bloomberg reported that ByteDance had launched a secret recruitment program targeting senior engineers and product designers from Facebook, Google, and Snapchat. The program was called Apollo, and it offered salaries that were 30 to 50% higher than Silicon Valley market rates. But there was a catch. New hires had to sign NDAs that prohibited them from discussing TikTok's recommendation algorithm, its data practices, or its relationship with ByteDance's Beijing headquarters. One former Facebook engineer who joined TikTok in April 2021 told Bloomberg, "They weren't hiring us for our skills. They were hiring us for what we knew about Facebook's weaknesses." He quit after 6 months. He said the culture inside TikTok's Mountain View office felt like an intelligence operation. Weekly meetings were recorded. Managers would ask detailed questions about how Meta's algorithm worked, how Instagram ranked content, how Facebook's ad targeting system made decisions. He said, "It felt like corporate espionage, but it was legal because we had left Facebook voluntarily." By September 2021, TikTok had more US users than Instagram. Let that sink in. Instagram launched in 2010. It took them a decade to reach that scale. TikTok did it in 3 years. And they didn't do it by being better, they did it by being more addictive. In July 2021, a team of researchers at Harvard's Berkman Klein Center published a study measuring the neurological impact of short-form video platforms. They used fMRI scans to monitor brain activity while participants scrolled through TikTok, Instagram Reels, and YouTube Shorts. The results were unambiguous. TikTok triggered dopamine releases that were 14% higher than Instagram and 23% higher than YouTube. But here's the disturbing part. The dopamine spikes occurred not when users saw content they enjoyed, but during the scroll itself. The act of swiping. The anticipation of the next video. The study's lead author, Dr. Trold, Jennifer Morse, said in an interview with Wired, "TikTok has gamified the infinite scroll in a way that hijacks the brain's reward system. It's not about the content anymore. It's about the hunt." She also noted that TikTok's average video length of 11 seconds was perfectly calibrated to prevent cognitive closure. Your brain never finishes processing one video before the next one starts. You exist in a permanent state of anticipation. That's not an accident. Now we arrive at the turning point, the moment TikTok stopped being a fun app and became something else. It happened quietly. No press release. No announcement. Just a shift in the content that started appearing on people's feeds. In November 2021, users began noticing a pattern. Videos promoting extreme political views, both left and right, were suddenly going viral with no clear explanation. A video claiming the 2020 election was stolen would get 6 million views in 8 hours. A video claiming police were hunting black Americans would get 4 million views in 6 hours. Both sides of every issue, amplified to the extreme. Researchers at New York University Center for Social Media and Politics tracked this phenomenon for 4 months. They created 200 fake accounts with neutral browsing behavior. No likes, no follows, just passive scrolling. Within 2 weeks, 73% of those accounts were being fed hyper-partisan content. The research team leader, Dr. Samuel Tan, told The Atlantic in March 2022, TikTok's algorithm doesn't just detect your preferences, it radicalizes you toward the extremes. If you watch one video about feminism, it will show you the most extreme feminist content it can find. If you watch one video criticizing feminism, it will show you the most extreme anti-feminist content. It pushes every user toward the polls. But here's what the study didn't mention, because they didn't have access to ByteDance's internal data. Some of that extreme content was heated. In April 2022, a whistleblower who worked in TikTok's Trust and Safety Department leaked documents to the Wall Street Journal. The documents showed that between January and March 2022, over 400 videos containing verifiably false information were manually boosted using the heating tool. The whistleblower, who spoke on the condition of anonymity, said, "We would flag videos for containing misinformation." The next day, those same videos would have millions of views. When we asked why, we were told it was organic reach. But we could see in the back end that they had been heated. The whistleblower was fired in May 2022 for violating confidentiality agreements. TikTok never addressed the allegations. They simply released a statement saying, "We take misinformation seriously and have robust systems in place to combat it." They didn't say what those systems were. Let's talk about the betrayal. In June 2022, Shou Zichu was named CEO of TikTok. He was 40 years old, Singaporean, Harvard MBA, former CFO of Xiaomi. He had no background in social media. His expertise was finance and government relations. That's not a coincidence. ByteDance didn't need a product visionary. They needed someone who could survive a congressional hearing. And on March 23, 2023, that's exactly what he faced. Shou sat in front of the House Energy and Commerce Committee for 5 hours. Congresswoman Cathy McMorris Rogers opened with a question that cut through the noise. She said, "Mr. Chu, does ByteDance have access to US user data?" Shou paused. He looked at his legal team. Then he said, "We have gone to great lengths to ensure that US data is stored on US soil." Notice what he didn't say. He didn't say no. Congressman Gus Bilirakis followed up. "Can you guarantee that Chinese employees cannot access that data?" Shou said. "Our data security protocols are industry-leading." Again, not a no. Then Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy played a video. It was a leaked recording from an internal ByteDance meeting in January 2023. In the video, a senior engineer is heard saying the US team has limited visibility into what queries are run on their data. They see aggregated reports. We see everything. The room went silent. Shou shifted in his seat. He said, "I'm not familiar with that recording. I would need to verify its authenticity." Krishnamurthy responded, "We already did. It's real. And it's from 2 months ago." Shou had no answer. He just said, "We are committed to transparency." The hearing ended with a bipartisan call to ban TikTok in the United States. 2 months later, Montana became the first state to pass a law prohibiting TikTok from operating within its borders. The law was set to take effect on January 1, 2024. TikTok sued, claiming it violated the First Amendment. The case is still pending. But here's the part that should keep you awake at night. In August 2023, the New York Times published an investigation that revealed ByteDance had been working with the Chinese government to develop AI-powered content moderation tools. The tools weren't designed to remove harmful content. They were designed to identify and suppress content that contradicted the Chinese Communist Party's messaging. The Times obtained contracts showing that ByteDance received over $700 million in government subsidies between 2019 and 2022. One contract explicitly stated that ByteDance would assist in the promotion of patriotic narratives and the suppression of hostile foreign influence. The Times asked ByteDance if those tools were used on TikTok. ByteDance's response was, "We operate independently in international markets." Not a denial, just misdirection. Now let's go back to the tale of two apps. In September 2023, a programmer named David Chen did something brilliant. He reverse-engineered both Douyin and TikTok's recommendation algorithms. He wasn't supposed to be able to do this. Both apps are heavily encrypted. But Chen found a vulnerability in how the apps communicated with ByteDance's servers. He intercepted the data packets and analyzed the metadata. What he found was damning. Douyin's algorithm had a built-in weighting system that prioritized educational content. Videos tagged with keywords like science, engineering, mathematics, and history received a 2.5 times multiplier in the recommendation engine. Videos tagged with comedy, drama, or conflict received a 0.7 multiplier. That means educational content was artificially boosted, and frivolous content was artificially suppressed. On TikTok, the opposite was true. Videos tagged with drama, conflict, outrage, and controversy received a 1.8 times multiplier. Educational content received a 0.9 multiplier. The algorithm was rigged, not to give you what you want, but to give you what they want you to see. Chen published his findings on GitHub in October 2023. Within 48 hours, the repository was taken down. GitHub claimed it violated ByteDance's intellectual property rights. Chen received a cease and desist letter from a law firm in Beijing. He deleted all his research and hasn't spoken publicly since. But before the repository was deleted, over 12,000 people downloaded his code. The evidence is out there, and it's irrefutable. TikTok is not a neutral platform. It's a curatorial weapon, and it's being aimed directly at the West. March 13th, 2024. Washington, D.C. The Senate Intelligence Committee convened for a closed-door session. No cameras, no press, just 14 senators and a classified briefing from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. The briefing lasted 97 minutes. When the senators emerged, their faces told the story before their words did. Senator Mark Warner, Democrat from Virginia, walked straight to a microphone and said, "What we just heard in that room confirms our worst fears. TikTok is not just a national security threat. It is an active influence operation." He refused to elaborate. Classified information. But 3 days later, the Washington Post published a leak. The briefing had included evidence that ByteDance engineers in Shenzhen had accessed the private messages of at least 2 American journalists who were investigating TikTok's ties to the Chinese government. The messages weren't just read, they were forwarded to a special division within ByteDance called the Committee of 100. That committee reports directly to the Chinese Communist Party's Central Propaganda Department. The journalists were Emily Baker from Forbes and Chris Buckley from ProPublica. Both had been working on separate investigations into TikTok's data practices. In December 2023, Baker noticed something strange. Her TikTok account, which she used for research purposes, started showing her videos that seemed oddly specific to her personal life. A video about a restaurant she had visited the previous week. A video about a medical condition her daughter had, which she'd only discussed in private texts. A video referencing a book she'd searched for on Amazon but never posted about publicly. She told ProPublica in an interview published April 2nd, 2024. "It felt like the app was reading my mind, but it wasn't reading my mind, it was reading my phone." She hired a cybersecurity firm to audit her device. They found that TikTok had been accessing her clipboard data, her photo metadata, and her keystroke logs. All of this was happening in the background, even when the app was closed. When she confronted TikTok's PR team, they told her it was a bug that had been fixed in a previous update. But her phone showed the data collection was still active as of March 2024. Chris Buckley's experience was even more disturbing. In January 2024, he received an encrypted message from an anonymous source claiming to have documents proving ByteDance was feeding curated content to specific high-profile American users. The source told him to check his Signal messages on a burner phone. Buckley followed the instructions. The documents were real. They showed that ByteDance maintained a list of over 3,000 influential accounts in the United States. These included politicians, journalists, celebrities, and activists. The documents revealed that these accounts received a different version of TikTok's algorithm, a version designed to gradually shift their political views by exposing them to increasingly extreme content. One memo from November 2023 stated, "The goal is not to convert them immediately. The The goal is to increase their cognitive dissonance over 6 to 12 months until they lose faith in institutional narratives. Buckley tried to verify the documents with 3 independent sources. Before he could publish, his TikTok account was permanently banned. The reason given was violation of community guidelines. He had never posted a single video. On March 22, 2024, the U.S. House of Representatives passed the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary-Controlled Applications Act by a vote of 352 to 65. The bill gave ByteDance 180 days to sell TikTok to a non-Chinese entity or face a nationwide ban. President Biden signed it into law on April 3, 2024. The deadline was October 1, 2024. ByteDance issued a statement calling the law unconstitutional and vowing to fight it in court. But behind closed doors, something else was happening. On April 10, 2024, Reuters reported that ByteDance had begun quiet negotiations with several potential buyers. The names mentioned were Oracle, Microsoft, and a consortium led by former Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin. The asking price was $60 billion. But there was a problem. The Chinese government had to approve the sale. And on April 18, 2024, the Chinese Ministry of Commerce released a statement saying, ByteDance's recommendation algorithm is classified as a controlled technology under Chinese export regulations. Any sale that includes the algorithm will require government approval, which is unlikely to be granted. Translation: China would rather see TikTok banned in the US than allow its algorithm to fall into American hands. Because the algorithm isn't just code, it's a weapon. And they've been using it for years. Let's examine exactly how. In May 2024, a joint investigation by the Atlantic and Stanford's Internet Observatory analyzed 7 years of TikTok's most viral content in the United States. They used machine learning to categorize over 2 million videos that had reached at least 10 million views between 2018 and 2024. The results were staggering. Videos promoting negative sentiments about American democracy increased by 412% between 2020 and 2024. Videos depicting generational conflict, particularly Gen Z versus Boomers, increased by 378%. Videos promoting distrust in traditional media increased by 291%. Videos glorifying hedonism, instant gratification, and anti-work sentiment increased by 506%. Meanwhile, videos promoting civic engagement, entrepreneurship, and long-term thinking decreased by 63%. The researchers compared this to Douyin's trends over the same period. On Douyin, videos promoting scientific literacy increased by 220%. Videos celebrating Chinese technological achievements increased by 403%. Videos encouraging young people to pursue engineering and mathematics increased by 311%. The researchers' conclusion, published on May 29, 2024, was unambiguous. They wrote, "The divergence between Douyin and TikTok's content ecosystems cannot be explained by user preference alone. The statistical probability that these trends emerged organically is less than 0.001%. This is algorithmic curation at a geopolitical scale." Stanford's Dr. Maut René DiResta, who co-authored the report, told NPR, "What we're witnessing is cognitive warfare. TikTok is being used to demoralize, divide, and distract the Western public, while Douyin is used to educate and unify the Chinese public. Same company, same technology, 2 completely different missions." June 14, 2024. ByteDance missed the first deadline to provide the U.S. government with transparency reports on its data practices. The Justice Department issued a formal notice of non-compliance. TikTok's lawyers claimed they needed more time to compile the data, but leaked emails obtained by Vice News in July 2024 told a different story. ByteDance executives were deliberately stalling because the data they would have to provide would confirm everything the U.S. government suspected. One email from a ByteDance legal director dated June 3, 2024 said, "Full compliance would expose operational structures that cannot be made public without compromising our strategic position in other markets." Another email dated June 20th said, "If we provide accurate access logs, it will prove that Redacted had unrestricted access to U.S. user data for the entire period in question." The name was redacted in the leak, but context clues suggested it referred to a Chinese government entity. August 9th, 2024, TikTok filed an emergency injunction in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit, arguing that the ban violated the First Amendment rights of its 170 million American users. The oral arguments took place on September 4, 2024. TikTok's lead attorney argued that banning the app was an unprecedented restriction on free speech. The government's attorney countered with a single sentence that ended the debate. He said, "Your Honor, the First Amendment does not protect a foreign government's right to manipulate American citizens through a weaponized media platform." On September 16, 2024, the court ruled against TikTok. The opinion, written by Judge Patricia Millett, stated, "While we recognize the platform's popularity, national security concerns and credible evidence of foreign manipulation override individual speech considerations in this instance." TikTok appealed to the Supreme Court. The appeal was denied on September 28, 2024. The ban would proceed as scheduled. October 1, 2024, 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time. TikTok went dark in the United States. Apple and Google removed the app from their stores. Existing installations were remotely disabled through a kill switch that had been built into iOS and Android at the government's request. For the first time in 6 years, American teenagers woke up without access to TikTok. The reaction was immediate and visceral. Within hours, hashtags like #FreeTikTok and #DigitalDictatorship were trending on X, Instagram, and YouTube. Protests erupted in Los Angeles, New York, and Austin. Thousands of Gen Z users took to the streets, claiming their rights had been violated. News outlets called it a generational uprising. But something strange happened in the weeks that followed. The outrage faded faster than anyone predicted. By October 15th, the protests had stopped. By November 1st, most users had migrated to Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts. By December 2024, a Pew Research poll found that 62% of Americans supported the ban. When asked why their anger had dissipated so quickly, many users said the same thing. They felt relief. One 18-year-old from Michigan told the New York Times, "I didn't realize how exhausted I was until it was gone. I got 3 hours of my day back. I started reading again." But TikTok didn't die. It just moved. In November 2024, ByteDance launched a new app called Vibe in Europe, South America, and Southeast Asia. Same interface, same algorithm, different name. Within 2 months, Vibe had 400 million downloads. The US State Department issued warnings to allied nations, urging them to investigate the app's ties to ByteDance. Most ignored the warnings. The cycle was beginning again, and this time ByteDance had learned from its mistakes. Vibe's terms of service made no mention of ByteDance. The corporate structure was hidden behind shell companies registered in Singapore and the Cayman Islands. The app's data was allegedly stored on servers in Ireland and Brazil, but in January 2025, cybersecurity researchers at Citizen Lab traced Vibe's data flows and confirmed that information was still being routed through servers in Shenzhen before being distributed to international cloud services. The smokescreen was sophisticated, but the operation was the same. Here's the lesson that no one wants to say out loud. TikTok was never just an app. It was a test to see if a foreign adversary could hijack the attention of an entire generation and reshape their perceptions of reality without firing a single shot. And the test was successful. For 6 years, ByteDance proved that you don't need tanks or missiles to destabilize a rival nation. You just need an algorithm and a willingness to use it. China understood something the West forgot. Culture is upstream from politics. If you control what young people see, hear, and believe, you control the future. Douyin teaches Chinese children that their country is strong, that science matters, that discipline leads to success. TikTok taught Western children that everything's a joke, that outrage is currency, that nothing means anything. One app builds, the other destroys. And here's the part that should terrify you more than anything else. TikTok is gone in the US, but the damage is permanent. An entire generation grew up with their perception of the world shaped by an algorithm designed in Beijing. They learned to expect dopamine hits every 11 seconds. They learned that attention is the highest form of value. They learned that complexity is boring and nuance is weakness. Those lessons don't disappear just because the app does. The app was just the delivery mechanism. The poison is already in the bloodstream. In December 2024, the American Psychological Association published a study measuring the average attention span of 18 to 24-year-olds. In 2010, it was 12 minutes. In 2024 was 47 seconds. That's not evolution. That's sabotage. ByteDance is now worth $210 billion. Zhang Yiming, who stepped down as CEO but remains the largest shareholder, is worth $63 billion. He is the second richest person in China. In a rare interview with Chinese state media in March 2025, he was asked if he had any regrets about TikTok's ban in the United States. He smiled and said, "Every product has a life cycle. TikTok served its purpose." The interviewer didn't ask what that purpose was. But we know. We've always known. We just didn't want to believe it. They fed their children spinach. They fed ours opium, and we stood by and watched because the opium felt good, because it was free, because we thought we were in control. We weren't. We never were. The algorithm was always in control, and the people controlling the algorithm were never on our side.